Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo, and we're here today doing a bit of a Destiny discussion. I, much like many of you fellow Guardians out there, have been gearing up and getting ready for the launch of Rise of Iron come this September. Very exciting, obviously, you know, the next substantial expansion for Destiny and what it's looking like the last substantial expansion for Destiny, at least Destiny 1. You know, we do know that there's a section of Bungie, if rumors are correct, working on Destiny 2 already, and, you know, we'll be pushing into 2017. They're still planning on doing content, SRL, so on and so forth, but, you know, it's going to be making that big jump forward. It's going to be interesting, right? I'm genuinely excited. I know a lot of you are excited. So as I've been slowly getting back into the game, I wanted to ease my way back into making content for it. I want to start by doing what I love doing most, and that's those discussion pieces. We're going to do a couple of these. I have a bunch of them kind of spread out over the next couple weeks and months. Lots of stuff in regards to the way the game currently exists, what I love and hate about those elements, and what I'd love to see them do to expand and improve as we move into, again, quote-unquote, Destiny 2. Very much just my personal wish list. Obviously, Bungie's going to do what they got to do. They're developers, but I still think it's a lot of fun to talk about, and I know it's something that you guys will love to get involved with. So please share your thoughts on this entire discussion down in the comments section below. Now, as you can tell from the title of this video, we're going to talk about strikes today, because strikes, man, if there is something in Destiny that I have more of a love-hate relationship with, well, I don't know what it is. I have no idea what it is. It might be all of these beautiful skyboxes and, you know, the city that we can see that we can't actually go to. That's probably the one thing that I have more of a love-hate relationship with than strikes. Like, strikes are great, right? I've had so many awesome memories in them. I had a pretty terrible memory today, and you guys are going to be seeing that. Two teammates that just, they didn't take their Guardian Wheaties, let's put it that way. And they kept dying on what should have been a very simple walk in the park. I feel like the third guy who got dragged along in a really bad action film. Dude, don't worry, man. It's going to be in and out. We're just going to rob a bank. We'll get the money, and we'll be done with it. And then we get there, and the two guys who tell me, you know, everything's okay, they, like, didn't load their guns, and then the ink pack explodes. That was pretty much the strike. Luckily, two more Guardians came along and saved the day. So let's talk about those strikes, right? We've seen some changes with strikes since Destiny obviously started way back early days in year 1. As we transitioned into year 2 with the Taken King, we've got some more interesting strikes. I particularly enjoy the Sunless Cell. I liked the whole idea of doing a fight in the dark. Not an extremely, you know, risky implementation for a mechanic in a strike, but nonetheless, I really, really dug it. I have to say that the best strike that we've been delivered is unfortunately only on the PlayStation 4. And that is the, I always forget the name of it, give me a second, the Echo Chamber Strike. I wanted to say that right. Didn't want to mess that one up. The Echo Chamber Strike. This was a strike that actually featured a lot of small mechanics. You had to use arc sources to short the barriers. Like, it was a super cool strike. I never got to play it, but I watched it and I was really pissed off and jealous that we didn't have it on Xbox One. So hopefully we will be getting it this fall, and that will kind of be like, hey, look, we get 2 strikes. And one of them is probably going to be more interesting than the Rise of Iron strike. That'll be Echo Chamber. But it was to me, it was a good demonstration of the fact that Bungie can build strikes that are more than just shooting galleries. You know, it's not just about like the boss fight. I think that's my biggest issue with strikes, is that the only time there's any sort of really unique implementation, it's either incredibly brief. For example, the Fallen Saber strike, where you have to carry that little arc orb to power up the door. You know, that's a super small brief moment, but you all know how south that can go if people don't communicate. Like, if you're playing with a group of randoms especially, and all 3 of you, like, I'm gonna be the arc carrier, no, I'm gonna be the arc carrier, and then you all just end up dying again and again to explosive shanks. You know, it's a small moment in that, you know, strike. Like, 2% of that strike is that moment, right? But it's super memorable because it requires a bit of extraordinary communication. You know, for once, it's not about all 3 of you shooting something just in a different way. It's about 2 of you shooting something while one person focuses on dodging, you know, electrical power currents and getting to the other side of the hallway alive. It's nice. It's a nice change of pace. That's the kind of thing I want to see more of. That's the kind of thing that Echo Chamber does so well, right? Outside of that, it's about the bosses, right? The bosses have, you know, little unique implementations, and I'm okay with that, and I want them to keep evolving the boss fights. I particularly enjoyed the Hammer Brothers, you know, fight. You know, we got to deal with the 2 different types of Cabal. That was a really, really awesome strike idea. One of my favorite strikes, hands down. But I want to see more outside of the bosses. I want to see more stuff like we saw in the Fallen Saber, and I want to see it expanded. I've always carried the mentality when I was back covering Destiny heavily that I really wanted to see them take some of the ideas out of raids and even some of the stuff from the final boss fights that we saw in the Prison of Elders and shrink them down and find ways to implement them into the strikes. You know, the smallest of implementations can go a really long way. You know, one of the things I continually talked about was the use of objects in the raids. You know, the idea that somebody has to hold this object, or we have to activate this object before we can do damage to this or damage to that. That sort of thing goes a long way because, again, you're triggering that extraordinary activity, you know, that extracurricular activity. Rather than having all the Guardians shooting something, one of them has now been, you know, instructed or taken on the role of, you know, relic carrier, or I've got to make sure I activate these buttons, otherwise our team will fail and die. You know, the entire strike doesn't have to be littered with those, but I sure as hell would love to see at least one of those situations popped into a strike before you make your way into the boss. Even if that situation happens to be in the boss fight, I'd still be happy, you know, but just more of that extracurricular activity, as we're going to call it. You know, more of those requirements for the Guardians outside of shooting. Anything that essentially requires your team to do a bit of unordinary communication. Now, that's obviously just a very straightforward way of looking at it. I know there's 1,000 problems that have to be solved by Bungie, you know, in order to make that type of thing work. And I think the biggest thing is, of course, what you guys are going to say. Not everyone's going to agree with me on this. Some of you guys like strikes the way they are, and I understand that strikes don't need to turn into like a 2-3 hour affair. Nobody's looking for a strike to be the length of a raid. I fully understand that there is that sort of length requirement, that maximum length that a strike can be, even when your team is failing. And I'm sure Bungie has a hardcore number for that they've developed over, you know, the last 2 years working with Destiny to find that sweet spot. And I know there's a lot of people who would say, but how can that type of strike work with randoms? You know, how can we have the communication among randoms? And I guess that's a fair stand to take, right? But maybe, you know, there's the ability to give us an additional difficulty for strikes. You know, I think that's the biggest thing right now, is that the ramping up of difficulty for strikes is, you know, the Nightfalls and of course the heroics, which simply, you know, okay, we're adding modifier to the Nightfall. Like, that's cool. I really like modifiers. I don't want modifiers to go away. You know, I like how they can sort of change the ebb and flow of a strike difficulty. But what if we had an additional difficulty that was, you know, that next step up rather than just adding modifiers? Again, it adds into those additional mechanics. I don't know, just my thoughts, guys. Anyways, I really want to hear what you guys have to say about this. Not so much about the whole last bit there, but the core idea of how strikes are implemented into Destiny right now, and whether or not you would like to see them have a few more complexities built in. Like I said, I'm not asking for the entire strike to be layered with crazy puzzles and cooperative elements, but it would be nice to have at least a situation every now and then along your way to the boss where your team has to communicate beyond the level of let's shoot stuff to be successful. I think that adds reward, it adds depth to the strike, and if you can, of course, base that around the elements, the atmosphere, the overall theme of this strike, then things get even more awesome, just like frickin' Echo Chamber. Echo Chamber is a really cool strike. I've always been impressed by that strike, and I'm really looking forward to finally playing it, hopefully sometime this fall. So there you have it, guys. Let me know your thoughts. Seriously, anything you have to say about strikes. What do you love about them right now? What do you hate about them right now? What sort of changes might you like to see Bungie implement as we move into quote-unquote Destiny 2? And if you had to pick one strike to be your favorite strike, and then, you know, let me know why that strike is your favorite strike. What mechanic within that strike, whether it's a boss fight mechanic or a mechanic that you run into along the way, you know, what is it that makes that strike your favorite strike? Let me know down in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.